The Season 9 update of Go Battle League in Pokemon Go has brought some sweeping changes to the metagames in Go Battle League. So to help you focus on what's good, I decided to boil it down to the winners and losers. The Season 9 update, winners and losers, if you will. This video here is part 2 of a 2-part series, so if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I'll link up above and in the description to that. This one is going to be talking about Manectric, the Weather Ball users, Crunch, and Zap Cannon. And of course, if you want to reference any of this information in a text-based format, or you want to get some more details on the matchup changes, link in the description to my article on GamePress, Go Battle League Season 9 Winners and Losers, written by the Swagman himself. First up, we have Manectric and Thunderfang. And Thunderfang on Manectric doesn't really mean a whole lot for PvP, but when it comes to the raid side of the force, it actually makes Mega Manectric arguably the best electric type attacker in raids. As far as DPS is concerned, it's on the level of Shadow Raikou, and Shadow Electivire is still a bit ahead of it, but Mega Manectric has a lot more bulk than the Shadow Electivire, so there will be circumstances in which this guy does end up having more DPS than the Shadow Electivire there. At any rate, you're going to want to bring a Mega to raids anyways if you're trying to be like all optimized about the damage that you're dealing, because it provides that team bonus. But yeah, interesting boost here for Mega Manectric. And if you're curious about regular Manectric or Shadow Manectric in raids with the Thunderfang buff here, they're better than before, but they're still both pretty bad options there. So yeah, Mega Manectric, a lot better for raids. Will you see me using a Mega Manectric in raids? Well, here's a screenshot from my account to let you know how I feel about Mega Pokemon. Manectric's changes don't just stop at Thunderfang though, we also have Overheat on Manectric as well, which is a pretty big deal in Great League PvP. Before, Manectric really wasn't existent in the meta at all, but with the combination of Snarl for energy gains, Wild Charge for the damage, and Overheat for the damage, I'd say Manectric, and probably more so Shadow Manectric because more damage, are now some threatening memes in the Great League meta. I wouldn't say either of them are like meta Pokemon. It'll be very infrequent that you ever see these Pokemon in PvP, and I really don't think they're necessarily worth powering up and using. Like me and my 500k Stardust, I ain't building no Manectric, that's for sure. But it can get some cheeky wins now because it does have that big damage with Wild Charge and Overheat. But if you don't have a shield, or you find yourself at a matchup disadvantage, then you're kind of like the clown using Manectric here in Great League. It's better, but still not great. Next topic here is the Weather Ball nerf. Weather Ball has been nerfed by 5 base damage, which honestly isn't that big of a deal. I mean, all Weather Ball users are technically nerfed. They're all technically losers in the respect that they lost 5 base damage off the Weather Ball, but many of them really aren't that affected by it. The only 2 Weather Ballers that really stand out to me as being heavily affected by this nerf, as far as like really good meta picks go, would be Politoed and Pelipper here. And the reason for this is because they focus more on their Weather Ball damage than the other Weather Ballers do. To help make this make sense for you, consider Abomasnow or Powder Snow Alola Ninetales there. They're using Powder Snow. Powder Snow does have good energy gains. It has some very okay damage. It also gets a same type attack bonus, so even better damage coming from them. And then Weather Ball is also an ice attack. So when they want to do ice type things, they already are doing ice, and then they're doing some more ice. And then when it comes to Charm Alola Ninetales or Razor Leaf Cherim, for instance, they're doing heavy fast move damage with very low energy gains. When it comes to these types of Pokemon, any early charge move is a really big deal for them. They don't really care about the damage that much, so the damage being reduced on their charge move isn't that big of a deal for them. Now, when you consider Politoed, Politoed uses Mudshot. Mudshot is a pure energy gaining fast move, very little damage coming from that, so most of Politoed's damage is going to be focused on the Weather Ball damage and its nuke move. And as a result, if you consider like Abomasnow is maybe using 2 or 3 weather balls to take something out, where Politoed's already using like 4 or 5 weather balls to take something out. Now with the damage nerf, and because Politoed doesn't use fast move damage as much, well, now it's going to take even more weather balls, like probably 1 extra weather ball, to take most of its opponents out, circumstances depending, of course, but that is that drop in consistency, that drop in damage, that's going to be hurting it. Pelipper is in a very similar boat. Wing Attack is a good damage, good energy gaining type fast move, but when you consider Pelipper as like a safe swap or Pelipper against steel and rock type opponents, well then Wing Attack no longer is about the damage, it's all about the energy gains there, and since Pelipper is relying on its weather ball damage to overcome steel and rock type matchups, then yeah, weather ball getting nerfed hurts Pelipper quite a bit too. Now, I do want to clarify here, like no weather ball user that's already like meta, that's already good, they're not bad now. They're not kicked out of the meta. They're still very, very good Pokemon. It's just when it comes to Politoed and Pelipper, they no longer feel as OP as they did before. But their nerf, their loss, isn't like how Pidgeot got slain by the 5 energy change. This 5 damage onto the weather ball there isn't like that significant for them. If you are curious about the matchup changes, here is a clip from the article on Game Press about Politoed here. I cannot be, asked to memorize all this stuff on the spot. And I'd say when it comes to the even shield scenario on Politoed in the Great League, yeah, you can see that it's hurting its consistency against Umbreon, Swampert, Shadow Nidoqueen, Sableye, and Skarmory even. So some neutral matchups that it's now less consistent in. And when it comes to Swampert, Swampert still has to land the Sludge Wave or the Earthquake, so it's not completely down and out against Swampert either. It's just a drop in that consistency there in those matchups. What's bigger, though, for Politoed in the Great League is that it can't overcome Bastiodon and Galar Stunfisk at a shield disadvantage. So before, if you got locked into those matchups, you could just get this sweet, cheeky KO on these Pokemon and save yourself a shield, no biggie. Well, now you don't have the potential for that as much. And then when it comes to the Ultra League, I don't think Ultra League Politoed is really affected that much. I mean, XL Skarmory is pretty infrequent. Swampert still has to land the nuke charge move on you, which doesn't always happen. Shadow Machamp is interesting, but it can be a little bit IV dependent too, and Shadow Machamp might be a little bit too soft for that matchup. And I feel like Shadow Machamp should be beating it anyways. I don't know. I use Shadow Machamp, and I think it's ridiculous that Politoed could beat it before. And then a drop in consistency against the Alolan Ninetales, potentially Surfetched, IV dependent, and maybe Shadow Snorlax too. Of course, against a lot of these opponents, if you land your nuke attack, that can also flip that too. I was just focusing mostly on the Weather Ball only matchups here. So when it comes to the Great League, Politoed is hurt quite a bit in those big neutral matchups, but overall there's still reasons to use Politoed over Swampert, so I really can't say Politoed is down and out there. When it comes to the Ultra League, I feel like Politoed overall is roughly as good as ever, so I wouldn't be bemoaning Politoed too much here if you already XL'd it out. Like, I've wasted my poor Stardust and XLs on this Politoed. It's just 5 base damage. That translates into like 3 to 7 effective damage in matchups. It's a big deal, but it's not that big of a deal. It's not like what happened to Pidgeot here. And then when it comes to Pelipper's matchup changes, here's also the clip from the article as well, because I ain't gonna poke wrap all this data at you. I'd say big thing here, once again, is gonna be its ability to overcome certain threats in a shield disadvantage, and its ability to overcome certain threats when at a shield advantage as well. Pelipper, once again, not dead. It's not a super bad Pokemon or anything. It's just less good than it was before. This does, however, bring us to one of our big winners here in the update, and that is Galar Stunfisk. Yeah, Weather Ball users having a drop in damage, Galar Stunfisk having an increase in consistency and matchup advantages. yeah, Galar Stunfisk is eating good. And this expands even beyond even shield situations, nice, neat, even scenarios. Weather Ball Ice, Weather Ball Fire, Weather Ball Water, all doing less damage to this thing means that Galar Stunfisk is going to get even more opportunities to throw a Rock Slide or land an Earthquake on these opponents. So Galar Stunfisk is just loving it. Like, nerf Weather Ball more is what Galar Stunfisk says here. So I guess that's just how it rumbles. It's like a monkey paw kind of wish scenario. You want Weather Ball to get nerfed? Well, now one of the biggest meta threats in both the Great League and Ultra League just got buffed because of it. I was actually surprised. I thought that these changes would make Galar Stunfisk #1 on PV Poke for the Great League. It's still #2, but now instead of being like 0.7 behind Medicham, it's now just 0.1 behind Medicham. And considering that Medicham counters Galar Stunfisk, that's pretty good. I'd say Galar Stunfisk is probably, like, it already was one of the best Pokemon in the Great League, but now it's definitely one of the best Pokemon in the Great League. Then next up, we have Crunch, and all Crunch users are benefiting from this. They are all winners in this update because Crunch is kinda OP now. Crunch has been buffed in the sense that it has an effect now, and that is 30% chance to drop your opponent's defense stat by 1 stage, which is not an insignificant buff. That's actually pretty wild. I thought that Niantic Pokemon Go would be a little bit smarter about the situation and just make it 20. I mean, it's a 20% chance in the main series games, so it makes sense for it to be a 20% chance here in Pokemon Go. And then we also had the whole Cresselia fiasco, I guess a while ago. If you don't remember, Moonblast used to have a 30% chance to drop your opponent's attack stat by 1 stage, and that ended up making Cresselia like insane in the Ultra League. It was like probably the most popular Pokemon in the Ultra League because it was just so good already, and now it had this 30% chance to be even stupider. And that's basically what I feel is going to happen to a lot of Crunch users. Once you start to think about it a little bit more for these Crunch users and how they're used, you start to notice how they are kind of having the potential to be insane here. The main example I kind of give in the article at first here is Zekrom in the Master League. Master League has seen more and more flying type threats, and with the changes in the meta, Kyogre is still like a really good option in the Master League as well. So that gives some more credence towards using Zekrom. Like, Zekrom's stocks have already been going up. Well, if Zekrom is caught in a disadvantageous matchup, right, you're probably going to lose, because that's how the Master League works. If you're stuck in a matchup that you can't win, then you're probably just going to lose the matchup. It's so like hard to get ahead in the Master League. Well, if you throw Crunch and Crunch gets that debuff on your opponent, well, that is now a potential for Zekrom to break the mold in those matchups and kind of boost its way through a losing matchup, or at least set up its opponent to be taken out more easily by the next Pokemon you bring in. So just sort of like how the boost in the past, or I guess the boost in the present with Togekiss too, can kind of allow you to turn the tides of a losing matchup, Crunch can do the same thing here for Zekrom. And then I started thinking about that a little bit more, and there's a lot of Crunch users that function well as safe swap Pokemon. I mean, first up we have Greedent here. Greedent's main move is going to be Body Slam, but if you're up against a Steel type opponent, a Steel type that could probably beat you, and you start debuffing their defense, that gives Greedent the potential to pull ahead. I did a video not too long ago about Shadow Skuntank as a safe swap in the Great League and how good it is there. And yeah, this safe swap Pokemon can now potentially overcome losing matchups once again, should it get the 30% debuff on the opponent. And then there's also Gyarados. Gyarados is one of the best safe swap options in the Ultra League. If you safe swap in the Gyarados, your opponent's probably going to safe swap or counter swap, I guess, into Lapras. If you get the debuff on Lapras, you now have the potential to flip that matchup. 30% of the time, should it happen, like matchups that you already expect to be into with these already good safe swap Pokemon, you're now going to have the potential to flip, which I think is pretty big. Oh yeah, and then let's not forget about Drapion here. Come on, man. Drapion as a save swap in the Great League and the Ultra League, really good option. In the Great League, it's a little bit more questionable if you want to run Crunch because Aqua Tail and Sludge Bomb both have really good coverage for it in the Great League. But in the Ultra League especially, yeah, that thing's using Crunch, and that debuff chance can help it flip these matchups. Now, to kind of reel in your expectations a little bit, I don't think that Crunch is going to make any Pokemon that's like not good, or any Pokemon that's like already kind of like on the cusp of the meta, because it has that 30% chance for the debuff. It's not that kind of situation here. But Pokemon that are already good in the meta that use Crunch, they're just that much better for it. How much better are they? I guess statistically, like roughly less than 30%. But still, that 30% chance to flip things, I think that's pretty big, and I am expecting a nerf in the future. For your GBL teams in Season 9 here, if you aren't using a save swap option that has Crunch, you might want to think about trying to work one in on your team, because, hey, if it's already good as a save swap, and now it has the potential to debuff your opponent, why not? Then finally, we got Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon's been buffed to debuff your opponent's attack stat by one stage 100% of the time, which sounds really good, but Zap Cannon is still a very high energy cost nuke attack, so if you hit an opponent with Zap Cannon, they're probably KO'd anyways, and more often than not, like nothing really wants to use Zap Cannon to begin with, so it's like, what's the point? You know what I'm saying? Like, consider Regirock, for example. It has rock and fighting type coverage with the Focus Blast and the Stone Edge there. And yeah, I can't imagine in 100 million years why Regirock would ever want to run Zap Cannon. The debuff chance just ain't really helping it out. But then I started to consider Pokemon that are using Zap Cannon that are already kind of spicy meme picks to begin with, and that kind of brought me to Porygon 2 and Porygon Z. Now, I really can't say either Pokemon are good in the Great League or in the Ultra League, but people do use them. They are interesting, spicy kind of meme pick Pokemon. They do have Lock-On, which is extremely good energy gains. They got Tri-Attack, which is kind of an OP attack. It has a 50% chance to debuff your opponent's attack and defense by one stage, 50% chance there. You'd think these Pokemon would be all over the place, but because of their stat line and their coverage, their bulk, you know, they're really not all that great, but they're still good enough where people like to meme with them every so often. And when it comes to their meme ability, like, you know, what's going to block Tri-Attack? The normal type attack there. You got Ghosts, Steel, Rock type Pokemon, all resistant to the normal type attacks. So what are you going to hit them with? Well, you're going to hit them with Zap Cannon. And then from there, I looked in to see if that could possibly flip some matchups. And for Porygon 2 in the Great League, it now has the potential to beat Bastiodon in the 1-shield and can pretty consistently beat Bastiodon in the 2-shield situation. And you might be thinking like, well, is this some Tri-Attack perfect bait unrealistic situation? Well, for the 1-shield scenario, it kind of is a little bit. But it can still tilt in Porygon 2's favor relatively easily if it has an IV advantage, like if they're using a level 40 kind of bad Bastiodon. But in the 2-shield, against all Bastiodon, including the level 50 XL Boy, it is a pretty consistent and repeatable win for Porygon 2. Now, is that the only matchup to think about? Obviously not. There are other matchups out there. Are the Porygons good now, or are they still spice picks? I still feel like they are spicy meatballs here, but now they've got a lot more potential than before, because prior to this update, Porygon 2 wasn't beating Bastiodon, and if Porygon 2 can overcome Bastiodon, I think that just suggests how many other matchups they could possibly flip now, thanks to smart play with the Zap Cannon. So if you are a Porygon memer out there, yeah, whip out your friends here and see what happens. I think you're in for some nice surprises. But would I build a Porygon? Probably not. I don't know. I'll have to see if I already have one built. If it's not too expensive, I might give it some test runs. I might just do that. And that wraps it up for the Season 9 update winners and losers. If you haven't seen Part 1 yet and you watched all of this video, well, link in the description to Part 1 Part 1 is very important. It is a 2-part series. And of course, if you want to reference any of this information, I have a link in the description to my article on GamePress covering all this info and more. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support the Swagman on Patreon, link in the description.